Friday Hangout. This is the Friday Hangout, not to be confused with all the rest of the Friday Hangouts that kind of followed along after we started it.
Nice.
This is the show. Thanks. This is the show where we talk about marketing and all things digital, and we bring on a guest each week to talk about it with us because, you know, the three of us talking to each other every Friday would be really boring. This week, we've got the amazing and fabulous Adam Helway.
Hola, ¿cómo es Janet?
I'm just great, thanks. And we've got Mr. Steve Farnsworth.
Hola, muy machos grande cojones.
Oh, good to know.
Oh my God.
Following that, I'll introduce our guest this week, and that's
now
Brent
leave the
Carnduff.
show, Shane.
And Brent is the SEO guy, and as you know from previous shows, you know, Adam and I are all into SEO, and Steve really wants to be, so it's going to be really exciting to have Brent here this week and talk about SEO and the future of SEO and how that relates to social and how it relates to marketing and all that fabulous stuff. So, Brent, why don't you give us a little bit of background on you?
Sure. Thank you, Janet and gang, for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here today. I do specialize in SEO. I run a company, Echelon SEO, and I blog about it. I follow it very closely. One thing I should point out is I typically work with small businesses, whether they are very local small business, dry cleaners, plumbers, stuff like that, or financial advisors. I work with a lot of financial advisors. I have a background in financial planning. So there does seem to be a difference between enterprise SEO and at the local or small business end of it. But I love everything involved with SEO. I follow it closely. I like to blog. I have my blog. I also do a blog on Steamfeed once a week. And this is my first Hangout. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I'm a big fan of Google Plus, and I've known about the Hangouts from way back when, but I've actually never participated in one. So I'm really excited to be here.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Well, let's jump right into that then, because you really have a broad scope of clients, and there is a big difference between, you know, marketing SEO locally, maybe on a more global scale. But, you know, we all have these misconceptions about how SEO works, you know, and one of the ones that I'm hearing a lot lately is maybe changing is the whole idea of duplicate content. And, you know, can we talk about that a little bit and what duplicate content is and what it means to SEO?
Yeah, so duplicate content, you're right, there is a lot of misinformation and confusion with SEO. And it seems, of course, Google only allows out so much information, and that's the starting point. And then with all the changes we've been going through the last couple of years, things are changing so quickly that it's hard to keep up with everything. There is a misconception that duplicate content results in a penalty, and that's not the case. I mean, in extreme situations it can be, but for the average person out there that ends up with duplicate content on their website, or has two different websites and ends up with the same bio or something like that, it's not really an issue of penalty. What it is Google wants to present the best answer, and typically the original answer if it's duplicate, and they can't always tell what the original is if there's multiple copies. So typically it'll go off of date of when it's published, but sometimes it'll go, you know, if Huffington Post publishes one of my pieces 2 days after me, they may rank higher for it than I do, just because there's such an authority, have such an authority score. But it's more of a concern of allowing the search engines to know, particularly Google when you're talking about search engines, but to know what piece is the original article or piece of content that should be shown.
So you're saying, I mean, like, if I can, so one of the things I've heard is that why you don't want to, like, necessarily have the same thing in multiple places per se, it's more of an issue about having the original authority, have people come back to you. And if I understand correctly, there's actually a way to deal with that. When you syndicate content, you can actually ask people to include a canonical tag. And could you tell people why they'd want to do what that is and why they'd want to do that?
Yeah, well, a canonical tag is just a way of declaring what page is the original. So if I syndicate this somewhere, or somebody asks to use one of my articles or something, I just ask that they put a canonical tag on their article. It's actually in the code. It's nothing that any of the readers will see. It's just a little bit of code, and it points to Google that yes, this is an article, but the original is over there on Brent's blog or somewhere. So the canonical is a great way to deal with that. And in WordPress, it's very easy to add canonical. Oftentimes, depending on the SEO plugin you're using, there's just a little place to type in the page that you want to use.
You know, so Brent, I mean, like you said, you've been doing SEO for some time, and things have never sort of been so almost nebulous and multidimensional as it has been over the last, I'd say, year to 2 years in SEO. Everybody's sort of trying to find a way to shift from a lot of the old school ways that had been fairly persistent for some time. One of those things that I touted that was new only a couple years ago, that I touted as being really, I thought was going to be really important, and suddenly seems to have been drug out into the back alley and shot, is authorship.
Yeah.
You know, and so could you explain a little bit to folks what authorship is, and I don't know, maybe you've got an opinion about why. I mean, they sort of stated why it didn't work out and so on, but in my opinion, I'm just amazed that they stopped that little project for some time. But you know, do you want to explain to folks what that is?
Sure, I'm with you, Adam. I thought it was a great idea, and I'm kind of blown away that it was removed as well. But authorship is the idea of identifying authorities in each industry. And so, if you have someone that's really well thought of and an industry thought leader, the authorship, Google would be able to identify them, and even if they're not writing on their own blog, if they move to different syndicated blogs or whatever, or guest posting, that Google would recognize that as an authority, and that would help. Eventually, the idea was, at least the presumption was, that would help in search rankings, that authorities would have better chance of showing up than somebody that's not necessarily recognized yet as an authority. And it's very intuitive in an idea. That seems to make sense. That would seem to be good for the people out there writing, and good for Google, who's trying to give the best answer to queries, which is also good for searchers. They did recently, it was kind of looked like it was going to be a slow death, and then it was a very sudden death. They removed images a few weeks before they just ended the program. And so one of the things that I find a little I guess frustrating with Google in the last few years, it always, you know, it's kind of the chief of search, the king of search, and so everybody looks to it for guidance of what's good and not, and you always had some hope or sense that there was a master plan, and right now I'm not sure there is. They seem to be adjusting on the fly, and authorship was one of the things that got cut. They just removed it almost altogether. Apparently there's still some tie-in, and I don't know if it's long-term or short-term with Google Plus, that if you're posting unique stuff on Google Plus, it will still show up with authorship tags and in the search results, but otherwise is gone.
Adam, you shared, when we talked about it on the show a few weeks ago, you actually shared an article with Janet and I afterward that said that while the authorship thing in Google has gone away, that there's still an author, the mechanics of who author stuff is still going to be tracked. Remember that article?
Yeah, I shared it in our chat, so that way we can have it on our show notes. But
I don't think it's the same article I was thinking about, but if it covers the same topic, that's fine.
Yeah, it's I mean, in general, as Brent was saying, you know, it sort of went. It looked like it was going slowly, then went even more quickly. But they haven't really said what the benefits on an ongoing basis are going to be, because there's such a small percentage of people that actually implemented the technical code that was needed in order to associate an individual with a bunch of sources that they might write for, or one source that they might write for. And as you were saying earlier, Brent, you said, you know, for instance, when it comes to duplicate content, that Google is now, in the past they would penalize. They're not penalizing now. All they're doing now is it makes it harder for you to be the one that ranks, because they're looking at a few different signs to decide, even if you were the canonical source, whether, like you said, a Huffington Post that really has more authority, but that authority is based off of domain and page rank, not based off of authorship rank, where had it been done by, say, one author, that author might have gotten more credit. I mean, bottom line is hopefully they have the same author on both titles. If it's two different authors, that's sort of a whole other weird thing in itself. But
it's called plagiarism.
Yeah, exactly. But Steve, you had a question?
Oh no, I just wanted to ask about some of the things that I think that one of the things that I think marketers don't have. Content marketers need to have a fundamental understanding, I think, of SEO. And SEO, someone actually made an interesting comment, even though we don't really have webmasters per se anymore. Somebody said, well, SEO will always be an issue in terms of things being findable. That in reality is once it's set up, good maintenance is, kind of the days of the dark arts of SEO per se are gone. But you need to have at least a clear information structure and somebody who's making sure that you're doing all the right things ongoing. Do you agree with that, Brent? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree overall. The first days are done. Google has done a great job of, and I think they'll continue to get better. There's still elements where they can get it, but removing the whole link economy, and they've done a great job. Now, one of the things that with Hummingbird, when Hummingbird came out and search was becoming more related to voice or how people talk and longer phrases, and the idea is that Google will be able to sift through the content and identify what it's about, even without traditional SEO. I think that's a great goal. I think that's where they're going. But I think a lot of people, at least relative to my opinion, jumped ahead and assume that's happening now, and it's not to the degree that Google would like it to. So I do think a lot of the traditional, as you said, Steve, a lot of the traditional stuff is still important. That somebody's doing that, getting the title tags in the right place or the right title tags and the headers and content. It is important, obviously, to write for your reader. That's always should have been a rule. Hasn't always been with SEO the way it was. So I think we're in a funny time of a combination of traditional search still being very effective, or SEO, with the idea of where search is ultimately going. I don't know if I addressed your question, Steve, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Janet's probably on mute.
I'm on mute again.
You want to try that now so we can all hear the question too?
Yes. I think you really did address the question, and I think it's one of the biggest questions that content marketers have, because they all want to develop their content, and the questions that we all get immediately is, how can I develop the best content for the best SEO? And my answer is always, well, maybe you want to think about who your market is and who you're talking to and what you want them to do with the content that you're creating, so that you're actually creating a trail of breadcrumbs that they can follow to what it is that you want, instead of keyword stuffing, which we still see. So what of those things are really, Steve alluded to Black Hat, but what are the dead things, like, okay, link building, keyword stuffing, all of those things? What are the things that people should be avoiding because A, it's pointless, B, it's stupid, and C, you'll get penalized?
Right. So keyword stuffing is definitely one. I'm still a believer that the keywords need to be there, but your content needs to be written for your visitor. And link building has changed. I wouldn't say it's dead. It's definitely changed, though. Don't ever buy links. You want to have natural links, natural occurring links. The one, and that may be an issue we talk a little bit more about after. There's a general belief under Hummingbird, and this is one of the things I've said, that you write. Well, and Matt Cutts has said it. Google wants us to perceive, and I've said it. I've seen it repeated over and over on the internet, that write good content and we'll find you. And that's a great story, and it's a great ideal, but I don't think that's necessarily the reality yet, just because of the competition and the limited real estate available on the first page. But that's something we can get to. So link building has changed dramatically. I think, yes, Steve.
No, I was just going to say. I mean, I think that's a really hard idea for people to get. get their head around is like you talk about, Google will find you. They may or may not. But I know that one of the things that Matt cuts, and if I can find the video, I'll share it. He really talks about Google's shift away from keywords years ago into more phrases, which I think is also why they no longer provide the biggest keywords. They're trying to force people to be more phrase, long tail oriented.
Long tail.
Is that kind of what you're talking about? Is that fall in the same basket?
Well, that's kind of where I think we're in the balance. Yeah. So the long tail keyword or phrase is definitely the way to go. So if I'm working with a financial advisor, I wouldn't have him or her repeat financial advisor over and over again. Their keyword might be it'd be the financial advisor in Philadelphia specializing in Social Security,
retirement planning.
Yeah. So what happened is, particularly when Hummingbird came in, one of the reasons was because people are using voice search more now. They're using Siri and some of the other voice searches. And the future is going to be voice search. At some point, we'll do all of our search through voice. And people type differently than they talk. So when they used to be all text or type based, they would just type financial planner, but now or pizza. But now they want, Chicago style pizza nearest me, or in my neighborhood, or something like that. So the phrases have become longer, and so Hummingbird is geared to eventually be able to not just pick out the keywords that are typed in there, but to understand the context of the phrase. What does all of the words together mean? And it's become very much more personalized. It depends on where you're at, what your search history is, and stuff like that. So that ideally they want to understand if you're typing in Taj Mahal, are you looking for India? Are you looking for the casino in Atlantic City? Are you looking for the restaurant down the street from you? Based on all of those things, your history and where you're located.
I also want to make sure that we sort of tie things back to, we've talked about, I think, things that us being more SEO centric are aware of, things that have sort of happened in the past and have probably been, for anybody who's actually read up on stuff, sort of buzz terms that have popped in throughout: link farms, link building, keyword stuffing. But I think the thing we all want to make sure is clear with those who listen to the show, and in order to simplify it, is we're all playing catch up. Like the people who are into SEO, we're playing catch up because we're always trying to pay attention to what's going on and see if we could see some sort of signal through the noise, okay?
Right.
But in the long term, what Google's been continuously saying, and it sounds like it's oversimplified, but it really isn't, they're trying to get us to skate to where the puck is going to be, not to sit here and try to chase behind it the entire time. And the bottom line is they are doing what they can from their end to understand more naturally what is going on with our content. That means we don't have to be the ones to be continuously chasing the tail of Google, because what happens is every year as we jump in, whatever content we're creating is just following the trend that we believe Google is trying to tell us, rather than doing what you were saying initially, Brent, which is we just need to make sure that the content is of the highest value to the people searching for that content. And that's really plain and simple it. The reason we don't have to do keyword stuffing anymore or any of that sort of thing is because Google used to have an equation to tell us exactly what that content was, but now it doesn't need the equation because itself is smart and looking at things from so many different angles in order to think more like we do when we see a particular thing. What is the context behind it? What is the time that we're looking at it, the location that we're looking at, and then ultimately what are the search results that pop up? So I would hear, what I'd like to sort of hear everybody, and Brent, do you agree that we need to be just let us sort of SEOs worry about all the little trending stuff just to see if there's something else, but bottom line is in most cases people will be safe doing an incredible job of servicing their customers by creating content that is legible, that is of value to them, and that's about it? I mean, I know there's more to it because you're getting paid to do
we'll all
it.
just
There's
go.
more to it. But I mean, I want to simplify it a bit for those that are saying, well, okay, what bottom line? What is it I should do? What is it should I get from this?
Right.
Is it just that it's just too much for me, or is there something I can do?
So bottom line, content. Over and over, I didn't think I'd ever say this, but bottom line, content is king. I mean, just because it's so cliched, not that it's not true. Yes, if you're a small business person out there trying to figure out how to get ahead in your market, in ongoing SEO, write, produce, create good content, whether that's video, audio, written. Produce good content. Within that, answer the questions of your consumers and clients. Within that content, you will naturally use keywords that they're using probably, and so you'll strike those things. So kind of as a bottom line to that one, Adam, yes, produce good content. I'm going to add a asterisk and a but to that, but I'll let everybody else kind of contribute their thoughts to that too before I get to that.
Well, I actually have something that's just slightly from that. I mean, just kind of one of the things that I think that, you know, I deal with companies. I tend to deal with mid-sized businesses who are really smart people, and I you know, while SEO is not what I do specifically, I have to know just enough to cause trouble, and I'm always stunned at the amount of bad SEO. I mean, basic things. We're talking about don't sweat it. Well, sure, don't sweat it in terms of like having to go out and spend a gazillion dollars. But I think, you know, part of your role, you know, your role is probably like, well, I come in and I tell people what kinds of content they have. Probably like with smaller businesses, you probably look at them and go, here's the kind of content you need to be creating that's going to connect with you locally, and here's how we're going to make it more findable. And like just even the basic thing, like I'm always surprised at how title tags and meta descriptions, people will copy, they'll write some kind of weird basic thing for both those, and then copy paste that for every single page. Could you talk about, and this is the kind of stuff people screw up and they don't get that. Why would they care about the title tag and having only one, and what it's the kind of wording they use, and a meta description, or why they may want to have unique ones for every page? Could you talk about what that is and what that means?
Yeah. So the title tag is actually, in the meta description that Steve's mentioning, is in the code. It's not actually something, and depending on what browser you're using, that your viewer will ever see, probably ever notice anyway. The title tag is your best opportunity, and it's part of what we call on-page SEO. It's your best opportunity to tell Google what your page is about. And so a lot of times, and it's just a phrase, a small phrase, it used to be recommended to be about 65 words, but right now it's actually on width, so somewhere in the 50 to 60 words is usually pretty safe. But quite often it'll be the same title tag, or companies will just have their business name up there. And the title tag should actually describe what your page is about. So you may on your home page have your business name there as well, but you'll want to say that you're a financial planner in Philadelphia, or what you're doing. So your title tag should be unique for every page, so that Google understands the unique value of every page and the content on it. The meta description is a little bit different. It's actually again, it's code. Typically where you'll see that is on a search engine results page. So if somebody searches financial planner,
right underneath the title tag.
Yes, exactly. Financial planner Philadelphia, the search results page will show up, and the very top line, as Steve just said, is the title tag. Usually the title tag. It'll say that you're financial planner Philadelphia. The meta description is the 2 lines, and Google sometimes will change their Bing, but typically it is the 2 lines below the title tag. It's not a real important SEO factor any longer, but it is your first chance to sell to that potential client. It is what, now that you've appeared in their search page, it's your chance for you to say, hey, click me instead of the guy above me or below me.
This is fundamentally free advertising. In that
yes. It's your first opportunity to sell, your first impression. So it is important that they're different and unique and for each page. Mostly just because you want to sell whatever they're looking for, and I say sell, but I mean basically present. If it's retirement planning page, then it should be about retirement planning, which might be different than just your straight investment philosophy or your estate planning or something like that. So you do want to make sure that those are filled out and that they are unique.
So lots of people say that meta tags are dead and nobody uses them anymore, and that Google doesn't even index them. But at the same time, that's what shows up when you tweet a page.
Well, they're meta tags and meta descriptions, right?
The meta tags are really all of the meta title, meta description, meta keywords. They're all different types of tags. But I hear what you're saying, Janet. Brent, you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, and again, breaking it down, meta descriptions are the one that are typically, they used to be an SEO element, and there's one called meta keywords, which used to be an SEO element. And SEOs, like myself, abused, not that I abused them, but that my industry
People you do.
abused that. They stuffed keywords in the meta keywords. They abuse the meta description, and so they're no longer, although the meta description is an important marketing tool still and in search, it's not really an SEO element. Is that what you were referring to, Adam?
Well, and I think not only are they not really, when you say SEO, they're not something that Google skims in order to determine rank for your particular page, but if you take, just like you said, it's really, really critical, because those are the things that actually they don't determine rank, but they are what shows up when somebody searches, so they determine to that user whether it's relevant to them to click on it, right? And so it's still critical to a large extent. But I think what Google is, one of the biggest changes Google has done over probably the last 5 years, is take what previously was easy for somebody to rig, keywords, titles, descriptions, that you could stuff your own. You could say, I think this is relevant to people who are searching, even though it's not relevant to the page. It's going to get traffic to my site, and Google's going to think that we should rank for this term that's of high value, dollar-wise or whatever. It's removed the power for people, for the most part, to fake what's on their page, and given the power more to Google to determine what's going on with stuff that you really can't fake without really pissing off the people that come to look at your content for the,
Yeah.
And then you've lost all the value of driving people to your page.
Correct. So there's no value.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. So go ahead.
Sorry, Janet. I was just going to say that Adam made a very good point, and one of the points that he made a little while ago, I think he was addressing, we may get into some really small or whatever SEO points, and there's always areas and angles to cover. One thing I would recommend and make sure that I want everybody to know is you absolutely need to follow Google's guidelines. They own it, and it's not worth taking chances. Don't get caught up in little tricks to try to trick them ever. Whatever it is, try to stay within the basic guidelines. Create good content. As Steve brought up, the title tags are important in a way to just to tell Google what you're about, and the meta description good for marketing. I kind of look at the on-page stuff, the meta description and keyword stuff. When clients are confused, I talk about SEO being a rocket or a missile. The stuff you do on page with keywords is your guidance. It's telling Google what you're about, what it kind of aims you in the right industry. Where the stuff we get into off-page developing or eventually gaining links is kind of your boost or power. And in different industries, depending on the competitiveness of your market, you need more boost than others. Sometimes you don't need a lot to be there. Just writing the straightforward content and title tags is enough.
So with all of that in mind, then one last thing that I kind of wanted to bring up before we go to shares is, what about content volume and frequency? How important is that to SEO, and is it as important as I usually emphasize?
Yeah. So my feel on that, and you'll get to everybody. I think it's important as a small business owner you do what you can. Any content is better than none. Quite often, small business owners, we talk about a goal of once a week. Now, having said that, I think as long as you're creating good content, sometimes you see people creating multiple posts a day, but it gets kind of washed out. It's all just very general and thin content. I would never do that. But the more good content you produce, the better. I know just from personal experience and from that of my clients, the more often I blog, the more traffic I get. And that's not just straight SEO. Some of that's just, some of that's social sharing and stuff like that. But the more you blog, the more traffic you'll get. But you want to always make sure that your content is of high quality. Don't substitute quantity for quality.
Is there a way that we can all really quickly, just because I know that people have had this problem in the past, how could we define quality for people in an easy way? Because I think then people go, well, quality, I don't quite get what that is. I mean, Steve or Janet, do you guys have an opinion about what is quality content for an individual?
You're the content guy, Steve.
I don't know what quality is.
Oh no.
I would, it's interesting that it's so hard for people. I mean, like the reality is that our time is very valuable. We know the kind of stuff that we read. As a marketer who's done PR years ago, we wrote press releases that pretty much no one read except the people who wrote them and the people who had to approve them, and they were these really horrible, not very informative things. And so people still create content, they write posts or articles that really are about them or something that's not very interesting to the person. What do we read? Like, I always think of airline magazines as a great example of engaging content. It's just there. It's something that people want to read. It's interesting about something that's relevant to them. Their finances, their travel plans, their lifestyle issues, or whatever. And it makes sense. We pick it up and read it. It's not a magazine full of stuff about the airline, its executives, their maintenance schedule, and the airplanes they're buying. And I don't know why people have a hard time making that connection. It's like, what are people reading? What do they want to read? And what they don't want to read, and I'll guarantee you, is stuff about your new vice president, because no one really cares except for your employees and your board and his mom or her mom.
I couldn't agree with that more, and I love that idea of taking the airline magazine, because they always do sneak in, a public service that they're doing or something about one of their employees, but it's that whole 80-20 rule thing right there that, it's not more than 20% about them. And so the quality of the content is there. It's content that's engaging. It's not a revitalized press release or, God forbid, the same white paper you've been releasing for 6 months and nobody cares. Now they didn't care when you released it because it doesn't say anything that people are really interested in. So that's quality content to me too. If you would read it if you didn't work for the company, then that's a good model.
Thank you very much.
Should we go to shares?
Sure.
Let me thank you so much, Brent. This was really good, and I think people learned a lot about SEO. This is the part of the show where we kind of go to shares, where other people besides me brought things that they thought were really interesting to talk about, and we absolutely invite you to engage with that. Okay. So, Steve, you want to kick it off?
Sure. One of the things, if there's any marketer worth his or her salt, if there's any words today that we've used that they don't understand, they need to look them up and understand them. And so Kissmetrics, Sean V. Work did a nice little primer on SEO, and it's super, super basic. But it's like you should learn a lot more as a marketer. But I'll post Sean's. You can see this thing now on demand, but he talks about a couple little things I thought were like really good takeaway tips about understanding duplicate content and understanding some basic code behind the page. But he talked about some things I thought were really smart. Like one of the things he talked about is like just in terms of both website design and for Google's ability to understand, because it's a computer it's an algorithm trying to understand what your site is, and so his go-to is all content on your site should be 3 clicks or less away from the home page. And there might be a few exceptions to that, but it shouldn't be a whole lot of exceptions. I think that's a great usability guideline and a great ability for help, for making content accessible to people. Because I find people create content that's like 4 and 5 clicks away, and it's like no one's ever going to find that.
No one goes on that adventure.
Yeah, no one goes on that adventure. Not enough people. And if you look at it, if you read Google Analytics, you'll notice that most people don't click that many times. So you've lost them. So I thought that was really a good overall site structure. Another one of the tips they talked about, and I thought was really brilliant, is he said, people like, if you have if you have a features for your product, and we often see this, like here's the product, and here are all the features on one page. You're losing free advertising then. He says, take each of those features or those services, create a separate page just for that feature. You can have a page with all of them listed that people can click out, but you should have a separate URL that is designed and specifically about that element. So if you have 19 features, instead of having them all on one page, which you get one indexed piece for, you can give each of those an individual URL that's designed just around that topic with those right words. Now you have 19 pieces of content indexed by Google. and I thought it was really good. So it's a handy little good primer. I would encourage everyone to, like, if you are beyond the basics, don't read it. But if you don't understand, like we were talking about title tags and meta descriptions and why they're important, you really should at least get started here. And the keyword is started, not the complete there.
That's great. At least have a basic understanding.
Yeah, we'll have that link. Are you going to share that through the showcase?
I will.
Yeah, not only, like you were saying, Steve, you said there'd be like 19 things featured on there, and not only we have one piece of index content, it's not even only about that, but it's going to be Google trying to index all 19 items on that page rather than deeping down a little bit. Brent, you wanted to add to it?
Well, just what you were saying, and I think that's a great point. I have a little test I quite often do, just a two-part test to go on and see if somebody's optimizing. A lot of times website business owners don't know if they've been optimized. The web developer may have promised it or not or whatever. And so one of the things is if you go in, I know Apple shows it, but if you go into Firefox on a PC, usually you can see your title tags in the very top bar on the screen. And so one thing I look at is, are there different title tags? And we talked about that. And the other thing is, in their features or services or products, are they all on one page or are they split out? If they're all on one page, you haven't probably been optimized, because, like I'll go back to financial planner again. They want to be found for investing, financial planning, estate planning, insurance planning, tax planning. And if all of those are on one page, they can only get found for one of those services. So not only that's a really quick test to see if you've been optimized. But I think that's a great point to make sure your features are split out onto different pages.
And the same can be done with FAQs too.
Yes.
Yes. And now those are also blog posts and Google Plus posts and Facebook posts and LinkedIn showcase posts that link back to your website and drive that traffic. But I think, I can't count the number of times that I've gone into a client and they've gone, oh yeah, our SEO guys, when they built the website, they did all that stuff. Don't worry about it. And I'll show them, and their jaws drop, because once you've built the website and you've built all the content, the amount of work it takes to go back in and redo that and make it have sense to them and redo everything is huge and mind-boggling for most people. So it's kind of scary. Adam, do you have a share today?
I do indeed, and this one comes from prdaily.com. The author is Kent Lewis, and the name of the post is The 6 Dirtiest Jobs in Digital Marketing. And I just thought it was a funny, interesting post. And there's a number of things I think we'll let folks see when they skim through it. But the 6 jobs. They had local search marketer, which I thought was interesting, and I'm not going to go into the description for that one. Link development specialist, so we sort of discussed why that would be a bit of a dirty job, and also there's quite a changing landscape as far as what the responsibilities of somebody in that position might be. Online reputation management. So anything that involves sort of dealing with people that are complaining about somebody, pissed off at something, that sort of thing is definitely a dirty job that only a certain... I remember actually talking with a friend recently who was looking to get a job in some place, and I forgot who it was that they were talking to. I think it was either an airline or it was a phone company. Oh, I remember what it was. It was PG&E. And they were
that's our power company for anybody who has a different power utility.
And basically they told this person, if you get this job, you've got to be prepared for arrows to be slung your way nonstop. And
all day.
That's why this person said, nope, sorry, I'm not doing social media for this. If nobody knows, we had an explosion here a couple years ago because of that. Let's see, sales or business development for search engine and social media marketing, display ad sales rep, and database marketing specialist are the dirtiest jobs. And so the mix of these, and I'm not going to go too deep into them because I think folks should read into it, but some of it has to do with dramatically changing landscapes, some has to do with dealing with arrows being slung at you all the time, and some of it has to do with I think that the difficulty of doing things like, for instance, selling display ads, especially with the low the decrease in value of those, and it's kind of like selling the yellow pages sometimes with those things, depending on the industry that you're going for. Anybody else? Any of those surprise you or make you think of one that you'd add to the list?
All of those are pretty painful, and we've all done some of them at one point or another, or had to hire people to do some of those at one point or another, and it's really hard because some of them, it's not so much that they're dirty, it's just they're so painful. Things like reputation management, when you get beat up like that from a company that's service oriented, it can be really painful, or it can be great if you have the backup of the company behind you. If they're willing to get behind you and give you answers to questions. But I know a lot of social media people that have been hung out to dry because they can't get questions answered. And so they just got to kind of wing it out there and be the front man, but they have no way of making people satisfied, and that's that's a horrible place to be.
You're hired to be a human shield at that point, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of top of my nasty list.
Steve?
Yes?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm ready to close, though. I'm ready to go away. I love you guys, but I'm done.
Well, if Steve's done, I guess we're all done. So I guess we'll just close then. Brent, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yes, thank you. I just actually started a new blog. It's just brentcarnduff.com, and that's probably the easiest place to find me on a website. Otherwise, Twitter, I spend a lot of time on Twitter at Brent Carnduff. My businesses have their own, but most of my time is actually right there. Those are probably the two best places to find me. That's
fabulous. And Adam?
You can find me at Secret Sushi pretty much anywhere, secretsushi.com, Secret Sushi on Twitter, although I am debating whether or not to split my Twitter account and start actually using Adam Hellway at Twitter, so I'll let you know when that happens.
Big decision.
Big decision.
And Mr. Farnsworth?
You can find me down in the bar on most Fridays starting about noon, so other than that, I'm on Twitter at Steveology.
Which is where he's going after the show. Yeah. And I'm Janet Fouts. You can find me at jfouts pretty much everywhere. And, that's pretty much it, janetfouts.com. And we'd like to remind you that the show is live now on Google and on YouTube. You can watch it on either of those, or on our website at thefridayhangout.com.
Or use our app.
I was getting to that. Steve, sit down, shut up. You could get the apps for iTunes, from iTunes, or from the Android Play, and you can actually listen to the podcast live there or on Spreaker. I'm going to have to put Steve off the video here. You're distracting me. Spreaker or iHeartRadio. Thanks, everybody, for the show, and we love your faces.